Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our pre-event webinar for Manchester Meet the Buyers. So thank you for joining us today. This is the pre-event for our main Manchester Meet the Buyers event, which takes place next week. So most of you on this webinar will be registered for next week's event. The majority of you have been to Meet the Buyers in the past, so you know kind of what you're looking out for. But today's session will be a good guide to what's happening next week, a good chance to hear more from the airport themselves, and we have some guests joining us to give a little bit of a taster session for some bid writing training that we'll be doing next week. So as I said, this is for Manchester Airport Meet the Buyers. It's the third year we've run this event, and it's the third year that we've sold out. So it's absolutely fantastic to see that everyone's really enjoying the event year on year, and that everyone's coming back. So just a few words about who we've got coming up. We're going to hear first from Lauren O'Neill, who is Procurement and Contract Manager at Manchester Airport Group. And then following that, we're going to hear from Matthew Walker, who is the MD at Executive Compass, who are a bid writing procurement specialists. So after they've spoken, I will come back on screen and I'll talk a little bit about how you can make the most of your event day with us next week at Manchester Airport Meet the Buyers. There are a few bits of housekeeping I'll run through first. You'll see there is a discussion forum. It's a button along the bottom of your screen. Please use the discussion forum to chat with each other or to ask questions or to stimulate conversation throughout the session. There's also a live Q&A section. You can submit questions to there. I'll leave those questions sitting there until the end of each speaker's session, when I'll ask the speakers the questions on your behalf and they'll be answered. So I can see your questions just came in discussion form now. It's a message from Carly, who's our behind the scenes managing everything to do with Manchester Airport Meet the Buyers. Put a little note in the discussion forum there. So please do feel free to drop any questions that you've got into the live Q&A or the discussion forum, and we'll be more than happy to help. But let's get started with the event now. So I think, first of all, we're going to hand over to Lauren O'Neill, Procurement and Contracts Manager at Manchester Airport Group, who's going to give a short presentation.
Thanks a lot. Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this session in advance of what we hope will be a very exciting Meet the Buyer event at Manchester Airport next week. As mentioned, my name is Lauren O'Neill. I'm a Procurement and Contracts Manager in the Group Procurement and Contracts team. I cover all of our three airports, but I'm based up at Manchester Airport and focus specifically on all things assets and maintenance. I have a few slides that I'm going to run through with you this morning, just to give you a little bit more insight into procurement at MAG, some hints and tips about working with us, things that we think it's helpful for you to be aware of. So I think we can just dive right in. Thanks, Carly. So a little bit about Manchester Airport to kick off. Hopefully you're already very familiar with the airport. Hopefully you've maybe travelled through or maybe done some work with us in the past. We are in the middle of a very exciting year. So far, we've welcomed 17.8 million passengers in the first half of the financial year. And we did hit a bit of a milestone for us, where we had 30 million passengers in the first for the very first time in a rolling 12-month period last September, and we are hoping to still hit that target as a year overall. So it's a very exciting time to get involved with the airport if you are kind of coming to us a little bit newer. We are the only airport outside London with 2 full-length runways, and we currently have more than 49 airlines serving almost 200 destinations. We employ an awful lot of people across our site, so just under 3,000 people are employed directly by the airport, but we do then go on to generate more than 16,000 jobs across the site. I mentioned it's a very exciting time at Manchester Airport, and a big reason for that is the transformation programme that we are currently undergoing. So the Manchester TP, ManTP, that you may have heard of. We are in the final phases of this now, and it's a £1.3 billion investment that MAG has made into really transforming the space at Manchester Airport. It's a 10-year project and it's due for completion towards the end of this year, at which point we're really going to see a big change in the footprint of our airport, with more than about 70% of our passengers now transiting through Terminal 2. Carly, we can jump to the next slide. Thank you. So a little bit about MAG procurement then. So we are a group procurement function. So we work across all 3 airports. So Manchester, East Midlands, London Stansted, the MAG property business as well. And we operate something called a category management approach. So as a team, we are split into 5 key categories of spend. For reference, those categories are capital delivery. So all of our construction work, major transformation programs sit within the capital delivery team. We have assets and maintenance, which is my category. This is where we procure things like security equipment that's needed within the airport, the baggage systems that sit behind the scenes, the buses that the passengers and staff need to make their way around the airport, and all of the maintenance contracts that are associated with that. We have airport services. This covers things like our contracts with local police forces to maintain security on our sites, and things like air traffic control services as well. We've also got a group business services team who look after everything from HR contracts to all of our IT contracts as well. And last but not least, our utilities and sustainability team, who are responsible for buying all of our energy that we require across the group. I mentioned we're a group function, so we very much look to partner with each of the different airports so that we can support this empowered airports model. While we are a group function and we are an airport group overall, our airports are all very different and all have very different needs and targets and strategies that they're working towards. So we try and really tailor our procurement approach to support that. Our spend is absolutely growing across both goods and services. Over the 12 months from January to December last year, we spent about £950 million across all of the airports, with a good chunk of that on construction work, so just under 300 million, with the remainder on those other categories that I mentioned. As a potential supplier for MAG, something that's probably really important for you to be really aware of is that we are a regulated organisation because of our ownership structure. So we were previously regulated under the utilities regulations, but some new legislation came into effect on the 24th of February called the Procurement Regulations 2024, or the Procurement Act as it's also called. This means that when we are tendering some of our contracts, there are really strict rules about how we tender, how we bring those opportunities to market, and the processes that they follow. And it's something we very much encourage all potential suppliers to familiarise themselves with. What it means is that how we come to market, if the spend is over a certain threshold, will include issuing a contract notice publicly. So there is a new platform called the Central Digital Platform, which is a government website. It's publicly accessible that you can register on, and that's where we'll publicise all of our opportunities. We may also look to utilise an existing framework agreement or one of our preferred suppliers that we may have procured through a different procurement activity, or because we are a public procurement organisation, we can also utilise the Crown Commercial Services frameworks as well. Would really take a chance just to point you all back to the MAG Airports website. Go and have a little look. It's got loads more detail around how to work with us and things that are worth being familiar with. Carly, we'll go to the next slide. Something we really wanted to highlight today was about the different ways that you can become part of our supply chain. Sometimes, because of the size, complexity, scale of works that we are undertaking, we will sometimes look to procure framework agreements with large organisations who have the resources and sometimes the financial backing to be able to really support these really large, particularly construction projects. But we're still very keen to work with SMEs and for them to be part of our supply chain. We see real value in that. So one thing we really want to encourage more suppliers to do is look for opportunities at a tier 2 level to work with MAG. So whilst you may not be working with us directly in every instance, you can absolutely still become a critical part of our supply chain. So for example, I've very recently just placed a group of contracts for facility management services. where we have kind of one partner for the airport who is delivering those services. But at a tier 2 level, there's a wide range of opportunities for subcontractors to come in who specialise in certain areas, whether that might be HVAC maintenance or waste management. Carly, we'll go to the next slide. So a few things to be aware of when working with MAG at any of our airports is that it's really driven by the unique nature of the airport operation. So those of you who've already worked with one of our airports before will be very familiar with this. Airport passes. There are some very strict rules around who can own an airport pass, who is entitled to have one, and the process that they will be required to go through. All staff, all of your employees who work on our site are required to hold either a landside pass or an airside pass. The processes to which are slightly different. As you can imagine, having an airside pass requires a lengthier vetting process. And you would normally, as a minimum, look for a DBS check. There's a fee associated with that, which we would normally look for to be picked up by the supplier. Permit to work. So for all of our airports, again, and Manchester has its own permit to work process, which we can make available. Really outlines the process for how you are able to undertake activity on our site. So the processes for things like carrying tools, taking tools airside, for example, which we really would look for you to familiarise yourself with prior to commencing any work on site. Airside driving and vehicles. Now, driving airside at one of our airports obviously is a little bit different to driving day to day. There's an awful lot of moving parts at the airport. You've got aircraft manoeuvring around the apron, and so there is an airside driving course that we would recommend or we require anyone who's going to be operating a vehicle airside to undertake. There are also then permits that are required with that and airside driving insurances that are required. Last but not least, sticking with insurances, because of the nature of our environment that we work in, we do require certain insurances to be held by all suppliers that are working on our site, particularly if you are going to be airside. So again, things to be really aware of that might be a little bit unique to working at an airport. We'll go to the next one, please, Carly. Speaking of things that we need you to be familiar with, we do have a supplier code of conduct. This is publicly available, again, on our website. I'd really recommend you go and have a read through. But it really sets out our expectations of MAG, of what we expect from ourselves and what we expect from those that work with us. We expect that all of our suppliers, no matter whether you are a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, if you are operating on our site, we expect performance and standards of behaviour to really align with this code of conduct. We do expect you to act in a manner that really protects our reputation, whether it is that you are, undertaking services or delivering goods on our site. And that code of conduct really captures what those expectations are. So we'd really recommend you take a look and have a good read of that before you do potentially go ahead to bid for any work at MAG. Next slide, please, Carly. So something a little bit new to the procurement team at MAG. We are coming to the end now of a procurement transformation. We like transformation at MAG. This is a major project where we are looking to really change how we run our procurement teams and how we manage all of our procurement and supply chain. The reason being, we wanted to really streamline and simplify the way we work with our suppliers. And we're doing that by introducing a brand new SAP Ariba system, which will manage our entire end-to-end sourcing and procurement processes. To be able to work with MAG moving forwards, all suppliers will need to register on SAP and everything will run through that. So all of our tendering activities, so all of the new opportunities we bring to market, all of our contracting activities will go through SAP. So signing of contracts, managing those contracts through the system, as well as all of our payments as well. We think there's a real benefit of that. So once you are registered with MAG on SAP, you'll benefit from being able to engage in those competitive sourcing events, all of that transactional activity that needs to take place. So I mentioned payments, POs, invoices, etc. You'll be able to then also liaise directly with the MAG procurement team. Carly, we'll jump to the next one. And last slide from me is something I really wanted to leave a key message with you all. So We are, as a business, going through a real period of transformation, and a key space with that is around all things sustainability. We've got some quite ambitious sustainability targets that we are actively working towards, and our supply chain is a really critical part of helping us achieve that. We've partnered with a company called EcoVadis, so we can work a little bit more collaboratively with preferred suppliers to really work towards that, always increasing our ethical and sustainable procurement and help to contribute to those wider sustainability goals. EcoVadis is a digital platform where suppliers can register. You undertake an assessment where they will look at things like your environmental operations, labour and human rights, and the ethics that your business can demonstrate. They do so by developing a really bespoke questionnaire for your business that's tailored to your industry, your size of business. It's very much not a one-size-fits-all. It is very bespoke. We ask then that suppliers will be uploading all the relevant information to help complete that assessment, and you'll then be provided with a EcoVadis scorecard and a different level of scoring. So it goes, I think, from bronze up to platinum. We don't have a certain level that we will only work with. We don't, for example, say you have to be a gold EcoVadis supplier to work with MAG. What we're more interested in is that you are actively working in this space. So you could be a bronze level supplier with a great action plan that you're working on to really improve your sustainability across your organisation. So would again recommend that you go and take a look at that. It is a mandatory part moving forwards of our sourcing activities. So if you are bidding for work with MAG, you are signing up to say you will commit to working on EcoVadis, and moving forwards, if you are then successful, it is something that we'll look to work with you quite closely on. Now, Carly, I think that may be all from me.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was great. There are a couple of questions. There's
Okay.
one in the chat here. So Damien's asked, they're a specialist SME based in Barnsley. Are you looking to work with local-based companies? Do you have a preference for local-based companies, i.e. Manchester, or are you looking for suppliers across the UK?
So we're absolutely always really keen to hear from local suppliers. For us, it's about making sure that we can connect with those suppliers and you're working with opportunities that are available. Although I think I've mentioned a couple of times, though, we do have that kind of group structure. The empowered airports model means that we're looking for the solutions that are right for Manchester Airport, for example, and that might look a little bit different to East Midlands Airport. So yeah, absolutely, always really keen to engage with local SMEs moving forward.
Great. Someone's asked if the Sapariba link can be shared, but I'm assuming if we send that to Carly, then Carly can just make sure everyone who's on the call gets a copy of that link.
We can absolutely share that. It is available via the MAG website. There's a kind of a working with us section under the procurement area, and you can find all the information you need on there.
Great. I mean, it was a really interesting presentation, and it's great to see that the transformation project's gone so well and that it's into its final year. Once the transformation project's finished, kind of what do you feel the opportunities look like? I know you talked about a spend of almost $1 billion across the airport group in the last 12 months. Is that your kind of normal levels of spend that you're expecting to be annual, or was a big part of that part of the transformation project?
So a significant amount of that spend is around transformation. I think in the slides we said it was about 300 million was specifically on construction works, but not all of that is transformation projects. Some of that is the continuous improvements we look to make to our airports, to our airfield, to our infrastructure. So I can imagine our spend will continue to grow over the coming years, and more opportunities will become available.
Great. And on the EcoVadis stuff, which I think is great, and at OMI we're really big on sustainability as well. We're B Corp, and it's really important to us. Our businesses who go through the EcoVadis, they get a score and they get guidance. If they follow the guidance, follow those improvements, can they go and get rescored to kind of is that part of the process that they can just be rescored regularly?
Absolutely. So I think that the idea of EcoVadis is to really acknowledge that there's no kind of fixed point in time. What we're interested in as a customer is working with suppliers who understand where they are in the sustainability space, and are committed to making improvements moving forward. As I mentioned, it's not about saying we're a platinum rated EcoVadis supplier. If you are, then fantastic. That you've obviously done some great work in that space. But we're also really interested in those suppliers who identify opportunities that they might have within their organisation to improve themselves in that area, which is why we don't set a threshold around what level you are or anything like that. It's much more focused around you having a clear view of where you are at that moment in time and committing to improve that moving forward by working on those action plans as time goes on.
Great. A couple of more questions have just dropped in.
Okay.
So Dennis has asked, with the growth plans highlighted last year by MAG and Arup, what is the next phase of work expected for the next 8 years?
And that's probably a very complicated question that I'm probably not in a position to share at the moment, but it's certainly something that we can come back on.
Okay. And another question from Mark says, new construction on site, when will this start?
I'm not 100% on that one, but again, we can certainly pick up with the construction team and find out a little bit more detail around what the plans look like.
Great, no problem. And I think that's all the questions for you. We've had one more question.
Okay.
I've had a few people asking if this event will be shared. Just let everyone know it is being recorded. We will put it on the website post-event. So if there's anything you want to rewatch, you want to look at long slides again, then they are going to be available.
Excellent.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Lauren. That was really interesting. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, everybody. We hope you have a great time at the Meet the Buyer event next week and look forward to meet you then.
Excellent. Thank you. And
thanks.
Our next speaker is Matthew Walker, who's the MD of Executive Compass. Matthew's going to talk through some top tips to improve your tender score. It's a short, sharp session. They will be doing something bigger at Meet the Buyers, but Matthew will probably give you a bit more information about that. So thank you very much. Welcome, Matthew.
Good morning. Thank you, Paul. And yeah, good morning, everybody. It's nice to meet you all. As Paul mentioned, my name's Matthew. I'm the Managing Director with Executive Compass, and I'll give you a quick overview of who we are and what we do. As Paul said, today it will be quite a quick taster session. We'll be looking in very brief detail at a few quality-related themes that we might be exploring in a lot more detail at the Meet the Buyers event itself. In terms of who we are, so we're a private sector organisation. We work with organisations, presumably such as many of the people on the webinar today, many of yourselves, to support organisations throughout the UK to bid successfully for public and private sector contracts. And exactly as Lauren was describing there, understand that obviously with the Manchester Airport Group, we would be looking at procurements which are run under the public procurement regulations and the new Procurement Act, which has just recently come into force. In terms of what we do, so we do work with organisations in all sectors, all industries, to bid successfully and win work. Our experience ranges from assisting organisations to bid for, as it says on the screen there, opportunities for as little as £10,000 through to multi-billion pound contracts. Again, linking to a point that Lauren raised as well in her presentation. We understand that a lot of organisations will be looking to bid for Tier 1 contractor status, other organisations Tier 2. Our experience and the tips and the advice that we can share will apply equally at both sides of that spectrum. And again, looking at all different categories of works, goods and services that organisations may bid to provide, would be providing bid writing support, which would apply in all of those different situations. Our philosophy, it says it on the bottom of the screen there, is if we find a good proven toolkit, a good proven set of approaches, which can be applied time and time again, following all the right systems, right processes, the right general approach to bid writing, we can find a winning formula. It doesn't guarantee that you'll win every time, obviously, and it doesn't mean that you'll always apply a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of tone and content and style. But if there's a core set of expectations on the part of evaluators or a general approach, which we find works one that can then be modified case by case to suit different procurements, then we can hopefully find a good way to increase our tender success rates and get more out of, like I say, the public and private sector procurement process. Plan for today, as I mentioned, is to look at some very brief practical tips, all of which we'll go into a lot more detail on at the session itself at the airport. Our sort of motivation and our inspiration for everything that we do is always what makes the difference between winning and losing. And I'll zoom in a little bit because I appreciate that's a little bit small on the screen there. What we see there is this doesn't come from the Manchester Airport Group. This is a general example of a scoring metric or an evaluation methodology which is used by a public sector buyer. And we'll see there the way, and I'm sure that those of us who are experienced with tendering will see these time and time again with different tenders that you might be participating in. The way that the different scorings or the way that the different marks are awarded based on the typical hallmarks or the typical indicators of the quality of various narrative responses. I'll mention, by the way, that our focus and our expertise is on the quality element of tendering. On the day at the airport, we will talk briefly about the way that tenders are evaluated overall, where there is obviously that commercial element too. We will be focusing specifically on the quality element of the tender evaluation. Key thing that we'll see there, if you look through the different definitions of scores range from 0 to 4, similar words appear in the definitions of each of them, and you'll see that the way that words like how, and actually that's one that always leaps off the page to me, the level of detail on how the requirements will be fulfilled. Almost always we see that as being a differentiating factor between the different scores or the different bands which are awarded by public sector buyers. Our advice today that we'll look at in brief detail and a lot more so on the day, we'll be looking at what does that mean in practice? What can we actually do as bidders to emphasize that aspect of our responses and to make sure that if a buyer is looking for a good, clear, detailed methodology and a good insight into how you would meet the requirements or how you would enact the various commitments that you provide within your tender submission, that's our aim, essentially, to look at what can we do to make sure that those details stand out as clearly as possible and are fully articulated. And we will be looking at very practical advice on how to do that. All of it adding up to that same shared aim, which is to maximize success rates. So 6 key themes that we'll look at briefly now, and then we'll be focusing on which ones of these have the biggest impact on your submission, or we'll be sort of prioritizing them on the day. We would say that there's 6 key things that high scoring winning tender responses often have in common. And we'd say that they need to be structured, they need to be detailed, they need to be particular to the opportunity that they're being used for, they need to be highly impactful, they need to be persuasive, and they need to be backed up by evidence. So when we say structured, first of all, we'll be asked various questions. And again, anyone who's experienced in tendering will know, particularly in public procurement, you'll have specific questions which are being posed by the buyer, which you have to respond to in turn. So although your finished proposal might be looked at holistically and it needs to all sit together cohesively, you'll also have a question by question scoring and highly particular criteria that you're responding to. The first common mistake that we see bidders making is that they answer the question that they wish they were asked, or they just sort of see key topics or key themes within a tender question, and they use that as a launching point or a jumping off point, and they start to talk quite generally about those topics without a clear structure or a clear alignment to the question that's been posed. So the most important thing that we'd always see, first of all, in a high scoring tender response is a clear logical ordering of the content, a clear and logical ordering of the points and the sections which are being included, which should be well aligned to the question which has been posed as part of the invitation to tender. Within that response itself, then, if part one is to have a good, clear structure, within the content of it, there's various things that we need to see. Most importantly, it needs to be detailed, and that does link quite nicely to the points that we see within typical evaluation criteria, where you will see the word detail almost always featuring in there. And again, it's often linked to that word how, and you'll see that in this example here, that the level of detail on how is making the difference between a lot of those different rungs on that ladder. So that's one of the most important things that we need to see when we talk about response being detailed, is that when we give a commitment to do something, we don't just expect the reader to take it at face value that that's going to happen. We have to explain it to them. We have to give them that practical insight, step by step in many cases, into how we're going to make it happen. What are we going to do in very practical terms so that commitment becomes reality? So we need that level of detail in there. When we talk about being detailed and particular, they sound quite interchangeable, but when we say particular, we have a very, very specific definition in mind. And what we mean there is it's not generic in the sense of the same response could be lifted from a tender that you submit for one authority or for one buyer and transplanted into another and left unchanged. So there's a great argument in favour of reusing high quality information from file. So you might have a model answer potentially that you've saved away that you can reapply in the future. There's a great argument in favour of that. If you ever were to do that, the important thing would be to make sure that you follow through and tailor and modify that in such a way that a buyer looks at that response and feels that it's very, very closely linked to their particular unique requirements, which are detailed in their service or work specification. If we don't see that particular detail in there, which could be something as explicit as simply naming the buyer, naming the local site, naming particular local suppliers that you might be using, and having that, again, particular information presented in there. Obviously, that step one is to have that on that surface level. More importantly, it's to have a working method and a way of approaching, or a service model, a way of approaching that service or those works, which is uniquely tailored and modified to the requirements of the service specification. That's ultimately what we need to see, really, for those highest scoring responses. We could have a good response, which would be applicable in all different situations and instances, but the strongest responses will feel bespoke and unique and particular to the opportunity tendered for. So that's what we need to see content-wise. And again, I'll show you an example today where we can see the difference between what we don't want to do and start to pick up on some ideas of how we might enhance a piece of writing to better meet a buyer's requirements. That's what we need to see content-wise. In terms of the way that it's presented and the quality of writing, we'd also need to see the highest scoring responses being highly impactful. And when we say impactful, various things there. One thing to always look out for, a typical tender question will set a word limit or a page limit, occasionally a character limit, but in public procurement, very common to have your responses capped in some way. You know, it might be 1,000 words, 500 words, 2 pages, whatever it might be. It should be relevant and proportionate to the opportunity that you're bidding for and the level of detail which is necessary and appropriate. Whatever that limit set at, we need to make sure we make optimal use of it. So we do need to see responses which are highly impactful, making full, effective use of those limits, writing which is concise, clear, and to the point, and which actually links to, and this takes on neatly to the point below, link to the impact of the methods themselves. What difference will it make? What are the benefits to the buyer of your proposed working methods? And that's the key thing. So like I say, point 5, the key thing about being persuasive is not to make the reader do the work in figuring out why you're going to do things the way you say you're going to do them. If we give a good, clear commitment and a good, clear methodology for delivering on that commitment, the next step for the buyer will be to think, and what does that mean to me? How is that going to filter through to better value for money? How's it going to filter through to better safety on site or any other benefits they might be looking for? We don't want to make them do that work. We don't want them to be looking at what we're committing to do and trying to figure out, what does this mean to me? We should be explicit in that detail. We should be outlining the benefits. We should be telling them how is that going to contribute to improved safety on site, to improve value for money, to cost savings, to whatever else it might be. So we should see those high scoring responses being persuasive as well as descriptive. The final thing with that as well is to back it up with evidence. So any organisation could put forward, you know, a good presentation, a good commitment, a good proposal of here's what we're going to do, here's how we're going to do it. What often makes a difference, and where we see buyers potentially picking apart and choosing between different organisations, would be, and which of those 2 bidders has backed it up with evidence? Which of those 2 has given us that confidence that they have the proven capability and competency to do what they say they're going to do? So if our tender submission is primarily forward-looking, written in the future tense and saying what we will do, what is there to stop an organisation that doesn't have the ability to do that from making the exact same claims, commitments and promises? It could be the evidence. It could be where we look backwards and say, and based on our track record, here's what we can say to you to give you that peace of mind that we are competent, that we are capable, and that we can do what we say we're going to do. So those are the 6 main categories that we'll be considering at the Meet the Buyers event when we do deliver our workshop. I'll show you a brief example of them now. We won't have time, obviously, in this taster session to look at an after version of these, but we'll show you the before, essentially. We'll show you what a piece of writing could look like, and then we'll pick up the key themes and what kind of things would we need to do to essentially remedy a piece of writing like this. When I say remedy at face value, this doesn't actually, to many bidders at least, look too bad. It's you know, this isn't an awful piece of work. We can see various positive signs within this. So we can see it's relatively clearly written at face value. We do have commitments in there. I'll give everyone a second just to have a look through that. So presumably the organisation here responded to a question like quality management. They've started by demonstrating that, you know, we understand the importance of robust quality management underpinned by effective checks and audits. Based on that, they've said, we therefore conduct regular spot checks of work on site with any identified defects corrected as a matter of urgency. This allows us to remedy potential issues and ensure a high standard of workmanship is consistently maintained. So again, potentially for some people, fairly relatable. We do see this style being employed quite often within tender responses. I'm sure some people will be looking at that and already picking up areas where that can be significantly strengthened. Paragraph 2, they go on to say, we also ensure to learn from any identified issues with improvement plans created and implemented and progress monitored at periodic management team meetings. We commit to sharing resultant lessons learned with other contractors, ensuring added value for our clients by contributing to wider system improvements. So again, at face value, not an awful piece of writing. As soon as we start to look at that though, with a magnifying glass, we will see areas where it can be significantly improved. And we'll actually go through this in layers now, based on those 6 different criteria that we saw before. In terms of structure, nothing really to say here. We just have a very small extract on the screen. But in terms of the content in there, I'm sure many people will already be spotting that we're lacking a significant level of detail in here. And I've highlighted here various key terms which are used, where we are giving a commitment in these places. But if you imagine an evaluator looking at this and trying to award marks, straight away they'd be wondering what our methods are in all of these areas. We refer to spot checks being conducted, but there's no guidance or clarity on who's going to do them, or what qualifies them as competent to do them, or what a spot check entails. What's the nature of the spot check? What is actually being checked? And how do they go about doing it? We go on then to say that defects are corrected as a matter of urgency. How? What's the process? Again, there's a commitment there to correct a defect. But if you imagine an evaluator marking this and trying to visualize the quality to which this is going to be done, we've not given them anything there, which is qualitative. We've not given them any insight into how well are we going to correct those defects, because there's no method being described there. That could be, as I say, where within the tender response, you'd expect to see brief step-by-step detail, or at least an overview of what does it look like when we correct defects. Likewise, in paragraph 2, you'll see various terms there. Improvement plans being created and implemented and progress monitored, but with no statement of who's doing that or how they go about doing it. And finally, that term sharing, very common to see these when we talk about communicating, liaising, partnering, sharing. We see these terms being used very often within responses. And when you look at them in the cold light of day, you can't actually visualize what does it mean in practice. We can't see a method being described in there. So that's just step one. That would be us looking at that and saying, is there sufficient detail in there? In terms of how this organization is going to do what they're committing to do, we can see that there's not. If we take that a step further, we can also see detail being missing in areas like these. So the sections highlighted in blue there, we talk about regular spot checks, periodic management team meetings. Again, the evaluator wants to know how often they might be to form an assessment of the effectiveness or the quality of those commitments. Same with a matter of urgency. It sounds good. It gives that sense of things being done as a priority, but there's no timescale specifically attached to it. That is what buyers often need to see, again, to award those highest marks. It's something a lot more tangible than that. We don't want to see those generic terms being used. We do need to see, like I say, highly specific, tangible terms for anything such as that. When we talk about being particular as well, we'll see some good examples of this here. You'll see that last sentence actually is probably the best example. We talk about adding value for our clients and contributing, and working with other contractors. Again, that's very generic. When we talk about working on site, could we not name the site there and say something specific about the requirements or the layout even of that site and how we're going to go about delivering these commitments in the unique context of this opportunity? The same thing there, we talk about other contractors. The first question for me as a reader would be, who are they? Can we make that more specific? And then that point at the bottom is a very common one. When we say our clients, surely we could name MAG there if this was a tender into MAG, rather than leaving it generic and talking about what our clients experience, or what about this particular organization who we're submitting a bid into today, what will they experience? So content-wise, already we're seeing, and as we go, actually, you'll notice that by the end, almost all the text on the screen will be highlighted because almost all of this can be significantly improved. Content-wise, we can see some improvement straight away. In terms of the quality of writing, the same thing applies. We'll see a lot of repetition in bids as well. We'll see a lot of repetitive wording being used. So you'll see the sentence structure there. Almost every sentence starts in the same way with that we structure. Absolutely nothing wrong with that in isolation, but we do see patterns of that being used, and it can lead to the writing lacking impact and flow if we don't see any diversity in that style of writing. You can see that word ensure is highlighted in 3 places too. So we're seeing repetition in terms of that particular word, but generally, again, in terms of that sentence structure, we're losing that impact that we could have if we mixed up our writing style a little bit more, or just produce something where we're actually thinking about a reader at the other end, somebody who's sitting there and trying to make sense of this and actually trying to be won over by what we're saying. We can achieve that a lot more easily and a lot more effectively if we sort of improve that quality of writing, optimize it, and make sure that we do have that flow, that impact within the way that we've laid out the responses themselves. Impact could also be negatively affected by redundant wording. And we do see organizations that are keen to show that they understand something. Best way to show you understand something is to say what you're going to do with that knowledge, rather than just to state that you understand something. So that opening statement there, is that actually giving the reader any insight into, again, our commitments, our methods, or anything else which you're able to give us high marks for? Could we actually free up that space and use it to say something more value adding? Final things to look out for before I hand you back over to Paul. Statements such as this, we can actually see an attempt being made here by the author to make this writing feel persuasive, so to talk about the benefits. But if we look at them again, this allows us to remedy potential issues and ensure a high standard of workmanship is consistently maintained. We're talking about advantages there, but we're not saying what the benefits are for the buyer. We're not taking it that next step to say, what will they experience? What difference will it make? And for me, the easiest way to do that is to link it through to the overarching purpose of the tender process, which is to optimize value for money. And if we think value for money will come from a quality enhancement or delivering a cost saving somewhere within that system, I'd want to be explaining the benefits in those terms for the buyer. I wouldn't want to say at the end, you can see that very generic statement, contributing to wider system improvements. I'd want to translate that into something a lot more practical and a lot more grounded in terms of the real benefit that the buyer would experience. Essentially, we're asking that question of so what? So what are those wider system improvements? How will that actually impact positively for the buyer? What will they see as a difference relative to if they're not appointed you as the contractor in this particular instance? So in a nutshell, that's the plan. What we've done today is, I suppose, we've highlighted the issue and we've not given the practical advice to resolve them. On the day, so at the Meet the Buyers event itself, what we'll be doing is we'll be revisiting those same themes, those same indicators or elements of a high quality response. But we'll be going into a lot more detail about what can we do about them, what can we actually do to take a piece of writing and produce something which is a lot more impactful and higher scoring. So that will be us essentially. I do look forward to meeting everybody on the day where we can, like I say, go into a lot more depth and detail on that and see what a high quality piece of writing might look like by comparison. And we'll work together essentially to figure out the steps to get us there. Thank you everybody for listening. I will hand you back over to Paul at that point in case there's been any questions.
Thanks, Matthew. That was really interesting. There are some questions dropping into the chat. So I'll run through some of them. Ian has asked, and this might be something that you can advise on just from your knowledge, but it says, is it possible to have visibility of contract awards so they can make contact with the tier 1, tier 2 contractors who win with people like Mag Airport? Obviously, you're not with Mag Airport, so you can't comment on their processes, but is that something that's going to be freely available going forward in terms of the new Procurement Act? It's going to make that a lot more visible, I believe, isn't it?
It is. It's going to make it a lot more visible. It actually has already been a requirement prior to the new Act coming into force as well to have contract notices being published, but there's a much bigger focus on it under the new Procurement Act, and there's different categorization. The site which I believe Lauren was referring to before with the central digital platform, we see those hosted on the Find a Tender, which again, that Gov.uk website, as Lauren described, that's exactly where we would advise people to look for that information. And yeah, exactly as you've said, Paul, there is under that new Procurement Act a much bigger focus on notices being published throughout the full life cycle of a contract. One of the other things that we'd say to look out for alongside contract award notices, and you can search for those on the Find a Tender portal, or the Find a Tender directory, sorry. The other thing that's been pushed quite heavily within the new Procurement Act is pipeline notices being a lot more visible, and there being more notices in the run-up to contracts being released, which again could be a big help for organisations looking for upcoming opportunities too. But yeah, in terms of looking for those tier 2 opportunities, my short answer would be yes. If it's a public contract, which you're looking to find subcontracting opportunities with, the requirements under the Act are that there would be an award notice which is being publicised.
Yeah. We worked with someone a number of years ago who used to do a lot of work on bid writing, and he used the phrase "follow the money." So
yeah, exactly.
Start at the top, who's spending all the money, follow it down, and find where you fit in. There'll be some point in the process where you might fit in, and it might not be near the top, but if you follow the money down, there will be somewhere for you there.
Yeah, that's a good way to think of it.
Dennis has asked, he said their bidding team will not be at the event. How will they be able to share details of the workshop with them? So I'm guessing this is on the day, Matthew. Will any slides you go through be available post-event?
Yeah, we'd be happy for that to be the case. Yeah, again, it's based on the way that you would normally circulate them. We'd be happy to see the slides that we share being publicised.
Great. I mean, personally, I get involved in some of the tendering work that we do here, and it was really interesting to see how you break it down. How you really look at the wording that's used and forensically look at the wording to see how, have you been clear? Have you structured it well? Have you been precise? Precision, I think, is a really big thing, and it's easy to get lost in in creative wording without putting the precision in there. So it's really, I thought was really helpful just as a starter for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that word you use forensically, that's definitely aligned with the way that we would look at it. We'd say every word that you use within send a response serves a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when we are writing, I know what it's like as well. You've got a very large team to work on, numerous questions, high word limits. There is a temptation sometimes to get something down on the page, and like I say, to maybe be a little, creative is not a bad thing if we're applying that effectively.
Yeah.
But maybe to lose sight of that, again, that super precise style of writing, whereby every single thing that we say, we're thinking, somebody's going to be evaluating this, and is that sentence that we've added in there going to give us one more mark, or if not, could we find a better use for that space within the response?
Definitely. Great. Well, Matthew, I believe you're speaking at 1:30 at the Meet the Buyer event.
That's right. Yeah.
So 1:30 at the Meet the Buyer event in the seminar room. Everyone should make sure to go along. I think of the content we're going to say, this is the one that's going to help you most in terms of converting those relationships. You'll start to meet the buyers, converting those into real hard, successful sales. The bid writing is going to be essential for that, and also for everything else you're doing. It's not just relating to the opportunities you'll make to meet the buyers, but the opportunities that you'll find in your online procurement portals, etc. So make sure you come along and have a chat on the day. But yeah, that's great, Matthew. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Yeah. And as I say, look forward to meeting everybody on the day. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So I'm just going to do another 5 minutes or so, just looking at some details around the event. Just before I start, there has been a question from Mark in the chat who's asked if we can send the postcode to him. Everyone who's registered for the event will be getting final joining instructions very soon. It'll have all of your, it'll have the address of the venue, postcodes, all the information you need. That will come through. If you don't get that, if you haven't had anything by end of the week, then let us know. But we will be getting in touch with everyone very shortly with further information about the event. But I'm just going to go through some information now on how you can make the most of Meet the Buyers, how you can make sure you take advantage of the opportunities that are available, and just go through a little bit of information about the event in general. So let me go here. Great. So one is Meet the Buyers. So many of you will have been to Meet the Buyers in the past, and I appreciate you may have sat through me doing a very similar presentation to this. But Meet the Buyers is essentially, it's an opportunity to give SMEs a chance to connect directly with major buyers. So at Manchester, it's all buyers related to the Manchester Airport supply chain. It's going to be mainly their tier ones and some of their tier twos. So it's a great chance for SMEs to find where they fit in the supply chain and to start those conversations. The event's been running since 2023. This will be the third one. It's been sold out every time. And so far, it's generated over £8 million worth of new business. So the evidence is there. It really works. And we just encourage everyone to make the most of the day. Someone's just asked in the discussion forum, and I was going to touch on it anyway. If you are on the reserve list, unfortunately, you will have to wait and see if we contact you with any spaces that open up. Because of the way Meet the Buyer works, it's on an appointment basis, and we try to get as many people in as possible, but we do need to make sure everyone gets a good number of appointments. So when we hit a certain number where the appointments will be full, we can't add anyone else in because we do everything we can, but we can't create more time, which means we can't create more appointments. So if you are on the reserve list, we will contact you. We're going to be doing the first setting of appointments very, very soon. We do have a handful of people who haven't chosen their appointments yet. If you're one of those people, please do respond to the emails that Carly has sent through. We need you to select who you want to meet with so we can set those initial appointments. Once we've done that, we will see how many appointments are remaining, and that'll allow us to maybe open up the reserve list. But the reserve list is quite sizable. It's been a very popular event. And we as soon as we release details for Meet the Buyers Manchester 2026, please secure your tickets as soon as you can, because it sells out almost instantly these days. It's a very, very popular event. So moving on the slides, which buyers are attending. So you can see here a great list of buyers attending, some huge global names, and then some of the smaller ones within the supply chains. But there's a wide range of buyers that you are going to have a chance to engage with on the day. You'll have a chance to select the buyers that you want to meet with, and most of you have already done that. We'll be sending out appointments in the next few days once we've set those, but it's a fantastic opportunity. So if any of those buyers are of interest to you, this is the event that you need to be at. In terms of what they're buying, it's a wide range of products and services. We've put a list on screen of the ones that have been the most popular in terms of what the buyers have told us they're looking for. These are headline levels. Under these headline levels, they do go into more detail, and that will be in the event catalog, which I believe is on the website and will have been sent to you when asked to make your appointment choices. But it's consultancy and staffing, print and events, metalwork, engineering, construction, safety and security, fit out and finishing, marketing, facilities, mechanical, environmental, water and plumbing, and IT. So a wide range. So Meet the Buyers really is for everyone. There's common misconception that it's aimed at construction and engineering businesses, but that's not the case. There's opportunities for all ranges of businesses. So making the most of your meetings. So on the day, your meetings will be 10 minutes long. It doesn't sound very long, but it's a good chunk of time to have a good conversation. And we will give some little tips to make the most of it. So the first one is preparation. Make sure you know about the buyers before you turn up to meet with them. So do your research, understand who they are, what they're doing, what their projects are. Make sure you check our buyer catalogue to see exactly what types of products and services they've been looking for. And practice your intro pitch. Can you give a really good introduction about your business in 30 to 60 seconds? And when you first sit down, that's your best chance to talk at the start. A really good, really strong intro, 30 to 60 seconds. And then following on from that, please listen. Don't spend your whole time talking. Try and have a good balance between you asking questions and listening to the answers. The buyers are going to meet with a lot of people that day, and they don't just want to be listening constantly. They want to talk about what their challenges are. They want to talk about what their opportunities are, and they want to talk about what you can do to satisfy that. So ask questions, listen to the responses, try to understand their needs, and agree some follow-up. You're not going to seal a deal on the day. It's very unlikely you're going to seal a deal on the day in 10 minutes. Agree some follow-up actions, find out what you need to do next. Do you need to email somebody? Do you need to go to a certain website to access a tender opportunity? Do you need to give someone a call? Do you need to reach out to a different person because the buyer at the event isn't quite the right buyer for you? So find out what your next action is and make sure you plan your follow-up. And we also recommend send a LinkedIn request. As soon as your meeting finishes, just send a LinkedIn request. So at the end of the day, when the buyer checks his phone or when he checks it on a break time, he can see straight away you've requested to meet with them. He'll recognize your face because it's fresh in his mind. And it's a really good chance to connect with the buyer and for that buyer to accept your connection. And from there, you can send them messages, you can follow up. And we also say keep your promises. So if you take away an action from a meeting, follow through with it, because if you don't follow through with it, there'll be no trust that you can then go on to keep any promises you make in a tender or a bid. So it's only a 10-minute meeting. You don't have all day, so please make the most of it. And we do also ask if you can really be aware of the 10-minute timer. There will be a timer on the day. It'll ring a little bell with a minute to go. It'll ring a loud siren once your 10 minutes are up. People can sometimes think it's distracting, but it's there for a reason. It's to let you know that your meeting's finished, because if you overrun, the next person gets less time with the buyer, and we want to keep it equitable throughout the day. No one's more important than anyone else, and we want to make sure everyone gets their 10 minutes with the buyers. We would recommend everyone download the event app. You will be sent a download link and a code through by Carly. The app's going to be really important. One, it'll have your appointment diary on there, so you don't need to carry a piece of paper around. Your appointment diary will be on there, so you can see who you're meeting, at what time you're meeting them. The event agenda will be on, so you can see what seminars are happening, such as the one that Executive Compass are going to be delivering. So you'll see that it's got a networking and a meeting hub, so you can connect with other SMEs who are at the event. So if you're talking with someone, you can connect with them through the app. You can swap details. So please do download the app. It's really integral to making sure you get the most out of your day. And also, please come to the seminars. We know most people can't attend all the seminars because they will sometimes have appointments that overlap with the seminars running. Unfortunately, that's just how it works. But there will be 3 or 4 seminars on the day. Try and attend them if you are outside of your appointments. And speak to some of our exhibitors. We will have some exhibitors there on the day. The exhibitors are there to speak with you and chat with you and network with you. And those exhibitors will include our event sponsors as well, which you've been able to see on the bottom of your screen for most of the day. Areas, Crown Oil Environmental, and HSS. They're sponsors, and they help to pull this event together. Obviously, Manchester Airport Group being the main the facilitator of this event. And please network with all the other businesses that will be there on the day. It's not only the buyers you can do business with. There's often opportunities, supply chain opportunities with other businesses that are there to meet the buyers as well, and collaboration opportunities. Sometimes there are contracts out there you can't satisfy on your own, but if you can find the right partner who does fills in the right skills gaps that you don't have, you can put a really good collaborative bid in. So that's everything from me, unless there's any questions, but I can't see anything. I'm going to quickly check the Q&A now. Okay, so there's a few questions. So the location is the runway visit park. Is the parking on site? Yes, there is parking on site. There's plenty of car parking. The main car park holds about 100, and then there's an overflow car park, which holds even more. So it does get busy, but there's normally spaces, so you will be able to park, and it's free charge. The parking on the day is free of charge. And the other question says, if we've completed our preferences section, how will this be broken down on the day? So if you've completed your preferences, so you've now chosen which buyers you want to meet with, those buyers, our team here will now start setting up the appointments. So they'll use your preferences to secure you as many appointments as we can. Those appointments will be sent to you in advance, so you'll know exactly who you're meeting at what time. And when you get to the event, there'll be a floor plan, so you can locate your buyer's desk. If there are any buyers that you want to meet with who don't appear on your list, you can come see us on the day. We do keep track of no-shows and people who cancel, and their appointments can become opened up on the day. So there will be an opportunity to see us on the day to see if we can add any more appointments. But it is a very busy event, as I've mentioned. So we are expecting most appointment slots to be filled. But you should be getting them very shortly. We're waiting for the last few people to provide their preferences. And once they've given us the preferences, all the appointments will be set and sent out to all of you guys. So that's all the questions I can see. So unless anyone's got any more questions, we'll leave it at that. Let's have a look. Someone said they're on the reserve list. Is there an opportunity to get a place outside of the reserve list? There isn't. So any spaces that open up at the event, they'll be offered straight to the reserve list, and it'll be on a first come first serve basis. So the first person on the reserve list will get the first refusal, and we'll work our way down. So we can't make any guarantees. We wish we could get everyone else in, but because it's an appointment-based event, we've only got so many appointment slots in a day, and so we do have to restrict it, unfortunately. But if you are on the reserve list and the space opens up, you will hear from us to invite you to the event. And Dennis has asked, will there be an opportunity to interact on socials before the event? Yes, there will be. So please do tag us on socials. On the next email that goes out, we'll make sure we include any relevant hashtags that you can use. Also, when you get an invitation to the app, you can start to interact with other SMEs using the app, using the meeting hub if you want to do that. But you can certainly start talking on socials about the event now, on the day and in advance. And please use the relevant hashtags, which we'll make sure we include on any emails that you get from us in the next few days. Oh, Carly's just put a message in the chat. So it's just a hashtag Manchester MTB. MTB meaning meet the buyers. Manchester MTB. So yeah, please use hashtag Manchester MTB to find other people talking about the event and start that conversation online. We'd be delighted for you to do so. Any more questions? Can you bring an extra attendee from your organisation? Unfortunately not. If you... Neil, what I'll do is if you can drop Carly a message just to discuss it with her, but I do believe we're actually at capacity in terms of catering and things like that now as well. So even if your colleague from your organisation was going to sit in on the same meetings, I think we are close to capacity in terms of being able to add anyone in, but Carly can have that conversation with you and work out if that's going to be possible. Certainly if your colleague wanted their own set of appointments, that wouldn't be possible, but it might be possible for them to sit in on your meetings. But we'll have to get Carly to have that conversation with you. So that's Neil W. We'll try and find out your details, Neil, and we'll drop you a message. But I think that's all of the questions now. So thank you very much, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next week. And if you do have any questions, you should have Carly's email address. You've probably spoken with Chloe in our team as well. Carly and Chloe will be more than happy to help. And yeah, we look forward to next week, and we're sure it's going to be another successful one. So thank you very much. Was that another question? That wasn't a question, no. Yep, great. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.